Larry Johnson. The missile defense shortage is worse than imagined, and things are not exactly so swimming. I mean, let's start off with there, Larry. As always, welcome back to the show. It's always a treasure to have you on here today.
Thanks, Danny.
But were you convinced by the Secretary of Defense when he went on this morning? Did you say, oh, well, I guess I was wrong?
He either is not being properly briefed, he is a liar, or he just refuses to accept the reality that he has been briefed on. So, this is not, we're not going into top secret special access program information here. The budget for building Patriot missiles, and they've shifted, they used to have what was called the PAC-2, and now they're using what's called the PAC-3. And that's, they started production on that in 2015. The first prototype came out in 2014, but in 2015. There's within the DoD budget, there's a line item set aside for these kinds of weapons. So you can calculate how many have been produced each year. For the first 6 years, the number produced annually was between 100 and 300. So I wanted to estimate total size. So I just said, let's assume it was 300 each of those years. That gives us 1,800. Then that took it from 2015 through 2020. Then starting in 2021, 22, 23, 24, you get 500 missiles a year. And let's say it was 550. So that would take it up to 2,200. So we'll test everybody's math skills. 1,800 times 2,200 is, 4,000. And then in 2025, the number went up 620. So, we're sitting roughly at, fourth. If we'd never fired one of those missiles in anger, if they'd never been used in war, you're looking at a total of 4,620. So when you then look at consider that how are these missiles employed, when there is a threat inbound, at a minimum, you fire 2. It's many times it can be 3 or 4. But again, let's just go with the number 2. Well, we've got 847 of those Patriot missiles were sent to Ukraine. And they were sent to Ukraine at the end of 2022. Now, since then, Russia has fired an estimated 12,000 ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So obviously, Patriot missile has not even been a factor at all in dealing with the threat. Because if Patriot missiles had been engaged, and you engage them at two apiece, the total inventory of the United States missile fleet as of December of 2025 would have meant they could intercept about 9,240 missiles. So, and we haven't even talked about what's been fired in the Persian Gulf and in Israel. Then we look at the fact that CENTCOM, Central Command, who's got this is its area of operation, area of responsibility. They're not the only U.S. military command with a battalion or a battalion of Patriot missiles. So you've got INDOPACOM. They've got 3 battalions, and in each battalion, you have 4 to 6 batteries, and each of those batteries will usually be stocked with either 72 or 96 of these Patriot missiles. So not to put this into, we're doing math class here on Danny Davis Deep Dive, and everybody will get an algebra certificate at the end of this broadcast. But when you total that up, out of that, let's just assume that the current inventory going as of at the start of this war on February 28th was 2,373. That accounts for what was used up in Ukraine. So right now, if you say that there are these 4 battalions of Patriot missile battalions, and let's assume that they just have 4 batteries each, not 6. So 4 times 4, that's 16. And then let's assume are they 72 or 96? Well, let's go with the 72. That's a much lower figure. Well, that means you get 1,152 missiles. So subtract that from the balance that we started with that was supposedly available of 2,773. All of a sudden, we're down to a level of an inventory level that if Iran is firing 60 missiles a day, this supply will be exhausted in 20 days. So conceivably by March 20th, the U.S. would be out of Pac 2s or Pac 3s. Now, what's interesting is there's pictures emerging that an older variant of this missile called the Pac 2 that really has been taken out of service, it's now being used. Well, why is it being used? Because that's the only thing we got left, I would argue. So this is, Hegseth saying this stuff, it's nonsensical. You don't have to reveal secret plans, but to insist that we're flush with missiles, that we don't have any shortages. So with the annual production of the Patriot Pac 3 down to 620 a year, they said, well, we got the THAAD. Yeah, the THAAD costs $13 million a piece, and we only produce 79 of those a year. And they fire in the same way that the Patriot does, 2 per target.
Yeah, Gary, if you can put that graphic we have up there, I think it's called not the math of action. It's Interceptor economics, I think is what. Yeah, there's the one right there. So there's some of the issues you have right there. There's the Arrow Interceptors at $1 million, the THAADs at $12.7 million, SM-6 Interceptors 5.3 million. And then you look at the cost ratios down there at the bottom of these Shahed drones versus those, and you see how really bad that math works out. It's talking about math problems.
Yeah, I mean, no, we're, and then when to start totaling up the costs of war. My understanding is that radar that was taken out in Qatar and at Al Udeid cost $1 billion.
Yeah, so, I've seen that validated.
Yeah, $2 billion. So there's $2 billion up in smoke. I mean,
plus the loss of the capacity. I mean, it's even more than the money.
Yeah, because when you talk a multi-layered air defense system, those radars, they were the foundation. They're like the base of the pyramid. Because they would detect, we've got a launch in this sector from this, and it's going in this direction, and it's at this altitude, and that information is relayed to the Patriot missile batteries, so they'll have an idea of where to engage. But now they've lost that, so they have less time to engage. But the fact of the matter is, number one, the Israeli Iron Dome is completely ineffective against ballistic missiles because that's not what it's designed to hit.
Right.
The Patriot is, on a good day, marginally effective, but very, very marginally effective. It just doesn't have a good track record of shooting stuff down. So the United States is laboring under this false delusion that we got. When Trump says we got more supplies, nobody does it better than us. Absolutely not. It's and this is what's so frightening. If these guys really believe that, that's the equivalent of some 8-year-old boy tying a towel like a cape and climbing up on a 20-foot roof and say, I can fly. Yeah, jump off. Gravity's going to take over.
Not going to worry about that.
Yeah.
Let me show you, because I can't help it, man. I can't help it. With the imagery you just have here, there is one person that jumps to mind about who's wearing that cape, and that is your Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who said this about the missiles.
We can sustain this fight easily for as long as we need to. Iran cannot outlast us. We're going to ensure through violence of action and our offensive capabilities and our defensive capabilities, as I said, that we set the tone and the tempo of this fight. As we are going into ammunitions that we have tens of thousands of and can drop unlimited supplies on with even more effects than the standoff emissions we have now, which is why when we say the throttle's going up, the throttle's going up and it's going to stay on high.
Now, I wish we had time to cut this video, but earlier in the day, earlier in that speech, rather, he started off by saying that we are winning. Everything's going great. We're ahead of schedule in some cases and some others. And he said that they're toast, and just talked about him like in very contemptuous terms. Said, we've destroyed their Navy, destroyed their Air Force, destroyed their air defense. They're basically helpless. And he used a lot of mocking terms about showing how there's airplanes flying over in Tehran and nobody can do anything about it. So basically, they're just wobbling, about to fall over. What do you say?
Houthis, Taliban, for starters. How did we do against the Houthis for 7 weeks? I mean, as I recall, Hegseth was in charge back then. So what? We didn't try? Yeah, I mean, we certainly failed. Now we're claiming that we can destroy all these mobile launchers right and left. So somehow we've developed magical capabilities in the last 8 months, because we certainly were unable to do it in Yemen, a much smaller country, a country that I think is about a tenth the size of Iran. And the territory in Yemen was not nearly as rugged and protected as the terrain in Iran. How about the Taliban? How did we do there? 20 years. Now, he can claim, well, I wasn't Secretary of War then. Yeah, but Trump was president during 4 of those years and failed to withdraw the American troops and failed to defeat the Taliban. So, this is typical. George W. Bush, May 2003, mission accomplished. How'd that turn out? So, they should enjoy their victory dance while they got it. I think we have yet to have a single war where use of air power forces a country to surrender. And instead, this murdering of civilians by the United States. We're not hitting military targets. We're hitting civilian targets. Remember, the definition of terrorism is the use of violence against civilians for political purposes. The United States is engaged with mass terrorism. But we like to dress it up and claim that, Hegseth says we're at war. Rubio says we're not at war. So they're playing with the terminology. Iran will continue to attack the West if it hangs on to the Strait of Hormuz, and I believe it will. There are others who argue that, we're going to sell our ships in there and force it open. Good luck with that, because I think Iran hasn't played all the cards in its hand with respect to the Strait of Hormuz. It has not used mines yet, and the way that current flows, all they got to do is start dropping the mines in. We don't have perfect surveillance of the area at all, and so Iran is ready. For them, this is now an existential fight. Their very existence as a nation is at stake, and so they're not going to give up. And our track record over the last 66 years, starting with Vietnam, we don't have the ability to stick it out, particularly if we start taking losses. And the one thing I focus on right now is, would anybody have been willing to bet 4 weeks ago that Iran could essentially neuter the U.S. military presence in the Persian Gulf? And that's exactly what they've done. We may still have a few soldiers on base at Al Udeid or at Prince Sultan airfield up in Saudi Arabia or at the naval base in Bahrain, but they're not combat effective at all. And key resources, particularly the 2 radars, the $1 billion plus radars in Bahrain and Qatar, they're gone. So, just blowing things up, as we saw with shock and awe in Iraq, we still had to put you on the ground in a tank moving forward in order to, quote, secure that victory.
Larry, you mentioned the shock and awe. I saw yesterday, I didn't get a chance to pull this soundbite up, but the CENTCOM, one of their official spokesmen, was bragging that, by the way, Our firepower here is about double that of shock and awe. So again, it's like really kind of like, look at us, we rock, it's awesome, etc. It almost brought to mind, you mentioned also the mission accomplished banner, etc. It wasn't quite like that. In fact, Secretary Hegseth took pains today to say this is not one of those moments, this is early, etc., but we're basically kicking their ass across the board here. But I'm going to ask this following question here, not as a means of ridicule in the Secretary of War, but as a means of saying, let's make sure we understand who we're talking about here. And you mentioned at the outset, is he telling the truth or is he lying? That's what you ask. Based on what he said today, let's look at something he said in 2024 prior to joining the administration, and let's see which of these Pete Hegseths should we listen to.
I've been a recovering neocon for 6 years now. Like the foolishness with which we ricocheted around the world, intervening, think it was in our best interest, when really we just overturned the table and created something worse in almost every single scenario, has led to the hubris of the Pentagon is that they want to now tell other countries how to do counterinsurgency based on what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, are you kidding me? So you really have learned nothing.
Ouch, that's painful. Talking about the hubris of the Pentagon based on what I just showed you. What's your reaction?
Oh, well, this is proof that there are UFOs and aliens, because obviously that Pete Hegseth was abducted, and he's probably undergoing anal probes right now as we speak.
Oh, wasn't expecting that answer, I gotta say. But,
I try to surprise. I mean, look, you got to say something ridiculous in the face of that, and so I would argue what he's doing right now is he's dishonest. He wants the job. And in order to hang on to the job, he's got to do a little bit of butt smooching, and the butt smooching is with Trump. But again, I don't even think Trump's driving this train. Trump is doing what he's being told to do. Israel's driving the train, and the disparity in the targets. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, just to put that into perspective. It's at least a third larger, maybe 2/3 larger than Ukraine. Now let's step back and without getting involved with any particular country, just look objectively. Russia has put an amount of firepower on Ukraine over the last 4 years that dwarfs anything the United States is going to do. Dwarfs, because they've got an array of ballistic and cruise missiles that we don't have. And yet, with all of that firepower brought down on Ukraine, it has not caused the Ukrainian government to collapse yet. Now, it may eventually, but we're talking so there's no quick solution. And what the Trump administration is doing with stupid statements like this by Hegseth, they're sort of building up the expectation. Oh man, this is going to be done. Oh, Iran's going to fold. Man, they're going to fold in a heap. Anytime now. Anytime. This and so by a month from now, when this is still going on, and Iran is still firing missiles into Israel, that's the other thing that's going on here. The control of social media by the Zionists like Larry Ellison of TikTok, other social media platforms, they're preventing the images of what's taking place in Israel. Now, our friend Stanislav Kropotnik, Stas, he's had access through the Russian side of what's actually going on in Tel Aviv. He said they're getting Gazaned.
oh wow.
Well, yeah, it's getting Gazaned. There are substantial damage to buildings and infrastructure in Tel Aviv and Haifa. That's not getting reported. The censors are shutting all that down. So you keep up this narrative. We're winning. We're winning. Sure, we're winning. Keep saying it over and over and over. But then we come to the reality of, well, the depletion of air defense missiles, particularly the Patriots and the THAADs, and the ineffectiveness of the Iron Dome. So all of this is going to add up. And at some point, Iran will be able to fire and hit any target. Now, the one thing I think they failed to do is go aggressive. At least I have seen no evidence of going aggressively against the airfields, like at Nevatim. They need to shut those down. As soon as they shut those down, then the ability of Israel to launch these, air-to-ground missiles will be eliminated. And so you'll be looking at, is this whole attack, this intensity of attack on Iran will taper off, but they're still, they control the ground. And these attacks have united the Iranian people in a way that they haven't been united since they were attacked in September of 1980 by Saddam Hussein, with the help and encouragement of the United States, I might add. So this is, I think the Trump administration is doing damage to itself by all this happy talk about, oh man, look at our progress. And meanwhile, can we operate out of Al Udeid? No. Can we operate our Navy? Can they sell in and out and get refitted at Bahrain? No.
Yeah. And let me ask you something else, Larry, in terms of the image war, I guess, because if they're blocking all the ones you're talking about from Haifa and from Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, et cetera, which Gary has found a few of. He's actually shown a number of them here, although they're hard to find. But let me show you what we are talking about, because Hexeth this morning was talking about how, people in Tehran, because we have complete dominance of the air, they can just look up and all they see is our aircraft, et cetera. And this is from the Institute for the Study of War. Terrible analysis, but really good maps. They're showing where the strikes have gone. So you see here in Tehran, and then you see a couple of these others over on the border here, that there's a large number of strikes, apparently up to 2,000 total strikes per day. And that goes all the way down through the country here. But these are some of the most important ones here. But you see they're concentrated around Tehran. Now, let me show you a different map here.
Well, before you go, let's note that distance from the Saudi border to Tehran, 270 miles. So what does that tell you? What it tells you is, despite all this crap that they got air dominance and Israelis are flying planes all over Iran, they're not. What they're doing is they're flying up to the border, launching the AGMs, for example, the JDAMs, the JASSMs, and then because those can travel, I think the JASSM can go up to 500 miles in travel. So, but it's important to note that it looks like they're standing off about 200 miles to fire into into Iran, given that distance shown on the map.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things Hexeth talked about today. Is he said that now then, because we have eliminated all their air defense, now we can start, instead of firing the standoff munitions, now we can start flying over Iran, and we can fire some of the other less costly munitions. That don't have to go that far. That's what he's claiming.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you about is we're looking at this in terms of war. So with your CIA hat on, so I'm zooming in a little bit here. So this is Tehran, of course, right here, and you saw most of those strikes around here, and you saw a few more over on the border here, not far from Erbil, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at there's a lot of other cities here, and I haven't seen any strikes going in on any of these. There was one and went into Qom. But in some of these other larger cities throughout the country, and there's more over here. If you're talking about to destroy the country, I mean, don't you have to be taking all of these into account as well? Because if you putting all your fire here, and I think I heard yesterday that the Tehran officials said, hey, people need to evacuate the capital city because there's all these bombs going in. Well, there's a lot of places for them to go that haven't been attacked at all.
Yeah.
What does this tell you about our capacity to defeat the nation?
Oh, we have no capacity to defeat. That's the point. And look at the terrain. I mean, ultimately, the only way to, quote, conquer a nation is to put troops on the ground. Well, to navigate those mountains, we've already seen the trouble we had in Afghanistan. We failed in 20 years to try to get control of that country. There's a better shot of the terrain. Yeah, this is just as rugged as anything in Afghanistan. Maybe not as high as some of the mountains, may not be as high as they were in the Kush, but still substantial. And you've got to figure your lines of communication. How do you logistically resupply troops that are trying to move through this terrain, which is going to be heavily defended? No, look, we are lying to ourselves about what we're capable of. And let me just, we got another benchmark to look at. Israel, since October 8th of 2023, so we're now about 2.5 years later, has had the Gaza Strip surrounded. A small area, 5 miles wide, 25 miles long. And they've had unrestricted power of the air just to bomb the smithereens, the Palestinians. They've killed their main leaders. Has Israel won in Gaza? No. I mean, come on, people. Wake the hell up and recognize what the limitations are air power. Can we blow the shit out of it? Can we level the earth? Can we kill a bunch of civilians? Absolutely. And what does it accomplish politically for you? Is Israel now able to walk what's left of the streets of Gaza? No, not at all. And now they're invading back into southern Lebanon and getting ambushed. Two more IDF soldiers were killed today in a Hezbollah ambush. The Houthis are going to start coming back in. So the air power can do some things, but it's not a golden ticket and it's not magic. If Israel, with every logistical and military advantage you can have in the world, in terms of being able, you've got it surrounded, you've got them confined to a specific area, you've got seemingly unlimited firepower, and with your Air Force, you can't defeat these people on the ground in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and so you see, there's Gaza, there's the little one there. Then you would just zoom back a little bit here, past all of Jordan, past all of Iraq, which you said was pretty big, and then you see all of this with Iran. So you can't even see it anymore. It's all this tiny little thing here, and the entire country of Tehran. And again, I just zoomed in just in this one part here. There's Tehran, and then you just roll on. There's still big cities. There's plenty of places that haven't even been touched with bombs, folks. So how do you think you're going to win this war? And where is all the optimism that Secretary Hegseth and all these other folks keep talking about?
Yeah, no, they're lying to themselves. And, they're not using just basic critical thinking skills. I mean, let's draw upon not just our own experience, but let's draw on the experience of the Russians. So, and the question is can air power defeat an enemy that is entrenched in a particular area? And the answer is no. We've seen it. It's failed in Gaza. It's failed in Ukraine. It failed in Afghanistan. It failed in Iraq, where we tried it, and it's going to fail here in Iran. And we think we can, quote, do a war of attrition. I know that the intel estimates, they believe that Iran is running out of missiles. I think Iran is, you're seeing a change in strategy because on February 28th, when the attack first started last Saturday, what happened was they had pre-planned, said, okay, if we're attacked in the capital, each of you military districts, you're on your own. You figure out what to fire. You figure out what targets to go after, etc. So you had all these different units operating independently. Now I think they're coming back. They're starting to get some central command and control back in place. And then as you're showing these missiles that are being fired out of the ground, these aren't mobile launchers. And where the hell how the hell do we bomb them and be able to destroy those? We can't. I don't care how many beats.
To me, that was I'd never seen that until we found that video, I guess yesterday or maybe this morning, where there's not even, you can't even see a hole. There's no sign at all. And how many of these, I mean, do you have any sense how many of these things do you project that there are in Iran?
I would project at least 10,000.
Oh, snap. I wasn't expecting that high of a number either. That's going to be a real problem.
Yeah. No, it's when you look at the video of these the Gary's showing right now, okay, these are underground missile cities. Just start counting. These go on for miles, not not a few hundred yards, miles. Why? Because they started dealing with this during the Iran-Iraq war, or the Iraq U.S. sponsored Iraq war, and then with the continued threats of the United States over the years, going back to when it really intensified in 2005, Iran's taken steps to not only have a place to store missiles and launchers, but also manufacturing capability. So it's beyond the capability of most, 99.9% of U.S. munitions. There might be some bunker busters that we could potentially destroy, part of a tunnel. But again, these stretch for miles. These are not in just one isolated area.
Larry, I want to, for all of the braggadocio and all the chest beating that Secretary Hegseth did in front of the cameras and does a lot that Trump is saying, after a briefing yesterday to the Gang of Eight, at least the Democratic senators came off there with a little bit different view here. I want to show you one who is one of the more responsible Democrats. So he's not one that's just looking to harm the Republican Party. And that's Senator Van Hollen, because he said that he saw this war of choice in the United States by President Trump didn't seem to have an attainable objective.
Right? Even today in the Oval Office, the president was spinning all sorts of rationales. On the one hand, they say it's to go after Iran's nuclear program. We know Iran has no nuclear weapons capability. After all, the president told the country that it had been decimated last year. So then they say, well, we're going to go after Iran's ballistic missiles. Well, Iran has no ballistic missiles that can get anywhere close to the United States. Zero. And of course, then Donald Trump said he was going to liberate the people of Iran. But if you look at public reporting about the CIA's assessment, it says that they concluded that if you get rid of the Iranian leadership, you're very likely to get a even more radical group in their place.
And Larry, that's the part I really wanted to ask you about there.
Yeah.
He's saying that the CIA is apparently saying that, listen, if we did get somebody else in there, they could be more radical. Now, I think, and this is what I'd like your opinion on, I think that he's referring to the fact that the Ayatollah, for the last however many years he's been in office, has had a fatwa against having a nuclear weapon. So he's the one that was the voice of moderation when there were others that were shouting for, no, we need to get one. And now he's gone.
Right.
So even aside from whether there's a regime change, there's already a leader change that's happened. What do you think that the possibilities are that the next leader doesn't repeat that fatwa?
I think it's 90% that Iran will have they'll have a nuke, a functioning nuclear weapon, maybe by July. I think it could be that quick, maybe sooner. I mean, they've already, they've done the work in the past. It's technologically, they've got the ability to do it. But as you correctly noted, when Ayatollah Ali Khamenei took over 36 years ago, so he came to power in 1990, and he's only a 50-year-old man at that time, but he said, "Hey, in accordance with the word of God, of Allah, this we will not build a nuke. It is a sin because of the death and destruction it can cause." And his word held firm. And then there was pressure all along from IRGC and others. But now what they're saying is they're going to say the blood of these 165 girls cries from the ground for justice. The blood of this volleyball team that was murdered cries for justice. Then the only thing that has been proven to protect a nation from being attacked like this unjustifiably, I mean, there was absolutely no warning or reason to do this other than we just don't like Iran. The countries that have a nuke don't get attacked like that. So I think the restraint is off now. And, as John Mearsheimer has said, repeated, and I think John's exactly right, Iran should have built the nuke. If they would have built the nuke, they'd be in a much stronger bargaining position with the rest of the world. Hey, they're a nuclear power. We got to take them seriously. And, but they continue to push the false charge that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism. And the United States never accepts responsibility for anything that we do to provoke these incidents. I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I literally just did a show before you came on, a solo show, where I said that exact same thing. We want there to be actions with no counteractions, with no consequences, and we don't want anybody to do anything, and they don't care what we want, but there will be counteractions. And now you're talking about what may be one of the worst.
Yeah. I mean, with, when we attack Iran via the proxy, Iraq, and it results in the deaths of 300,000 plus Iranians, maybe more, then we're surprised that they chant death to America. People are, why are they, we've been so good to them. Really? and it's just like, we blamed the Marine barracks on Iran. That wasn't Iran. That was Amal. Amal was a group that formed 7 years before Iran was under Islamic control. They formed in 1972. But all of this entire thing revolves around the fact that Palestinians, Shia Muslims in particular, who were disenfranchised of land by the Israelis, by these foreigners that came out of Europe, have been fighting to regain their land. And, there have been acts where they do attack civilians, were legitimate acts of terrorism. And when I say legitimate, I mean, they're bona fide acts of terrorism. It's not that they're legally entitled to do so, but that's why it happens. And then you get into this back and forth where one side hits and then the other side hits back, and then it's a ping pong match.
Right.
A lethal one.
And by the way, I want to share one other thing here, because you mentioned about the whole nuclear issue, and this may have changed the dynamics that hadn't existed in 47 years. And then we also have to swing back, and this all coincides with the author of this whole operation, which is not Donald Trump. He was coerced into it, but it's Benjamin Netanyahu, who went on television here in the United States to try and show you why it was actually a good thing and you should be happy about it.
Look, nobody stopped North Korea, so they now have ballistic missiles and nuclear warheads. But they don't say death to America. Iran is 50 North Korean. Iran is committed to your destruction. Look.
Iran is 50 North Koreans. My goodness, I had no earthly idea. What do you say to that?
Iran doesn't have as good a Korean barbecue as Korea does. I'll point that out. No, this is, Netanyahu has been predicting that Iran is on the verge of having a nuclear weapon for 40 years. But I guess if you predict it long enough, it'll eventually come true. And the irony here is, I think it's likely to become true because of Netanyahu's actions, because of his, unjustified attack on Iran. But look, it's not just Iran. Netanyahu and his band of Zionist crazies, they've been killing people in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, and not to mention Iran and Yemen. So, you know what? I think they're the problem. And I think, unfortunately, they have set in motion forces that are beyond their control. And militarily, despite all the tough talk and about how much they're kicking ass, again, if they're so tough, why haven't they been able to defeat Hamas, which is in a 5-mile by 25-mile box, which they don't have heavy weapons, they don't have an air force, they don't have missiles, they don't have artillery, and yet Israel can't beat them. So, that's a reality. And so people wrap your minds around that. Well, no matter what he says, that doesn't give Israel suddenly magical powers to defeat somebody that on paper they should have defeated 2 years ago. It shouldn't have taken 2.5 years. But again, Israel, they're cowards. And I call them cowards, call it to their face. Because you know why they didn't go in with conventional troops, they were going to lose too many soldiers because Hamas was not going to go quietly. They were going to fight because they're fighting for their land. And they took time to build fortresses inside the Gaza land strip for that precise purpose. So Israel tried to wipe it out from above, and it failed, completely failed. Yeah, they've killed a lot of Palestinians, and yeah, they've disrupted Palestinian society. But in this, they haven't made the Palestinians hate Hamas. If anything, that's rallied more support to Hamas. Just as what's happening now in Iran. I saw one guy, he was in his mid-50s. He was sort of he was a veteran of the Iran-Iraq War. And he was commenting, he says, my kids and my grandkids always, were puzzled at why were we so angry at the West? Why, America's not that bad. And now they're seeing it. And he says, now they understand. And the attitude of the youth is rapidly becoming anti-Western because they're seeing the murder of their classmates, of people just like them who didn't do anything. And it's not attacking military targets, it's attacking hospitals, killing babies. So, I mean, it is, again, the exact opposite outcome that Trump and Netanyahu allegedly want to achieve. Is the exact opposite's coming to pass.
Yeah, and in fact, I want to go there next, and this kind of ties into literally everything you just said there about the growing animosity toward the United States, the changing dynamics about how people even view us, etc. And then you got to get to how can this end? Now, I won't show it to you right now, but Lindsey Graham went out yesterday and said, listen, the Iranians, they just want to, the reason what they're doing right now, their strategy is to bomb all these things so that we will sue for peace. That's what he said was their strategy. That's why they're hitting all these targets, etc. As you've already said, I think you anticipated this before the war even started, was that's not what they're doing. But then I also showed Foreign Minister Araghchi, who was complaining on ABC News yesterday about saying, dude, we were negotiating with you in good faith in 2025. You attacked us. You did it again here. So the idea that we're now suing for peace to try and get this off the table is ridiculous. Yeah. And then this is what I do want to show you. Our Secretary of War, Secretary of State. Sorry, I get confused with Hegseth and Rubio because they seem to be battling each other to be the Secretary of War. I don't see any diplomacy in him here. And this video here is just putting that on stark display.
Which one, Danny?
Sorry, this one right here.
Let me explain to you guys this in simple English, okay? Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things. And this is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them. The president made the decision to go after them, take away their missiles, take away their navy, take away their drones, take away their ability to make those things so that they can never have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president made this decision. It was the right decision, and the world will be a safer place when these radical clerics no longer have access to these weapons. You see how they're using them now. Imagine how they would use them a year from now if they had more of these.
So if that's your chief negotiator, why in God's name, under any circumstances now, would you ever, quote, sue for peace? What do you think?
Yeah, no, they're not going to. They are, I think Iran's objectives now are, I think, pretty simple. Number one, expel U.S. military and diplomatic presence from the Persian Gulf. That's well underway. That's why they're attacking the embassies in Saudi Arabia, the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia, U.S. Embassy in Doha, Qatar, and in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. That's why they're attacking repeatedly these U.S. bases. Erbil up in Iraq, Kurdish controlled territory. It's been under unrelenting attack, and so they're doing a crisis evacuation of personnel. So you're not going. Those bases may sit there and may still have a U.S. flag flying over them, but you don't have U.S. personnel coming to work every day and doing their 8-hour shift or doing, the night shift in a crisis action center. So driving the United States out, then crippling the Western economies. That is what choking off the oil and coming out of the Persian Gulf, oil and liquid natural gas. Right now, there's the liquid natural gas produced by Qatar represents well over a majority of all the liquid natural gas produced in the world. They've shut down, and even if they got started back up, they wouldn't be back up to normal operations for at least a month. So that means that the price of liquid natural gas it's going to go through the ceiling. And what most people don't understand is when a country buys contracts for gas, like what's being produced today was put under contract 6 months ago or a year ago. So it's not like you just run out to the store and buy another. Hey, give me 2 more gallons. No, that's not how it works. So this is going to cause significant disruption. And opening the Strait of Hormuz, Trump pretends, okay, we'll send in U.S. naval ships to do that. I think if he does that, at least 1 or 2 of those ships will end up being sunk. And then that will further escalate, digs Trump in deeper because he's got to show that we can't be beat, even though when we're being beat, we can't admit it.
I know your time is limited here. I want to do kind of a quick lightning round to get your view on a couple of different things. One of them is can you talk a little bit about the innovation of the Iranian side in this war here against it, or obviously going against a much more powerful opponent here. This information right here, this news out is that the Iranian side had painted on the ground targets that appeared to be aircraft, and yet when they're bombed, it turns out that I think they call it an anamorphic ground painting. Turns out that it was just paint. So we're attacking non-existent targets.
Yeah.
Is this just kind of a curiosity, or is this indicative of somebody who's actually has a chance to do something meaningful?
Oh yeah, no, they knew they were going to be attacked, and so they put out dummies, decoys. You were active duty during the war in Yugoslavia back in, it was at 98, 99. And there again, we kept our U.S. Air Force kept claiming, "Oh man, we're blowing up all these artillery pieces of the Serbs." It turns out they were logs. They were decoys. So you got those decoys. Then we saw the other day that Iran shot down 3 F-15 Eagles, and people said, "No, they didn't. That was the Kuwaitis. The Kuwaitis shot them down." Oh right, yeah. So every aircraft that's flying with an IFF transponder, an identify friend foe transponder, they all 3 stopped working, and they stopped working in successive times, and nobody ever figured out they were shooting down American aircraft.
Yeah, the best common sense test.
Please go blow that smoke somewhere else. So we keep lying to ourselves about all this.
Apparently, there's a 4th F-15 that's also been shot down, by the way, that the Iranians have claimed so far. So next thing I want to talk. Yeah, so it's not at all innovation. I've already showed you those videos where they have created something that nobody knew about, or at least wasn't talking about, where they can literally fire from non-existent silos that no one could even identify out of the sand physics. So that's something that's new,
right?
And then these here. Now then, one on the other topic here, one of the conversations is that, look, Senator Blumenthal coming out of that Gang of 8 said that apparently the U.S. is thinking about some version of ground troops. And then this was reported by Alex Ward afterwards, that they're open to supporting groups in Iran willing to take up arms to dislodge the regime. And they're apparently talking about Kurdish leaders. Apparently I think it's not the KRG. I can't remember which one it's called. That's also thinking about going in there. How serious of a threat would that pose to the Iranian regime if you get these Peshmerga and some of these other groups inside of Iran and arm them?
0. Iran's got a 1 million man army combined between IRGC and the existing army, and then let's call it the paramilitary force. That's why Russia provided 28 attack helicopters to Iran. They're prepared for this. They knew this was coming. And who's going to help Iran fight those Kurds? Turkey.
Yeah. I was thinking that Turkey will be the last one that wants an independent Kurdistan inside of Iran. I couldn't imagine they would in any way support that.
No, not at all. They'll be working with Iran to destroy them. So this is desperation moves by the United States, trying to reach. Oh, let's try everything. Throw it at the wall. Let's see what sticks. Because this was not planned out. They didn't have their plan was we're gonna decapitate, and because there's 80% of the people hate the mullahs based upon a CIA survey that turns out to have been false, that Iran will quickly collapse and we'll be able to waltz in, and we'll figure out who'll be in charge later. Maybe we'll try Pahlavi, but that was it.
Well, and then you had Lindsey Graham that said, yeah, we're not even going to do that. In fact, we don't care. That's not my job. He said that on Sunday. It's not my job. It's not President Trump's job. Tell me again, I'm sorry, in the last couple, I know you only have like 2 or 3 minutes left,
yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about that. So if you're an opposition figure inside of Iran, if you've seen how we've treated others in the region, to include the Syrian Democratic Forces, by the way, who we just kind of abandoned just a few months ago, and then now you say we want you to rise up, and Trump says we're coming to help you, and we're bringing in force, and then you hear Lindsey Graham saying, I don't care what happens after the regime falls, they're on their own. How willingly are you going to be now to form together, risk your life, and knowing that you're going to be left on your own afterwards?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got history to look at. Go ask the Hmong that fought with us in Vietnam. How'd that turn out for them? Show me a single insurgent group that we've backed in history where they've come out on top and we kept our promises. Oh, and I'll leave you with this, and this will be topic for another discussion. The Venezuelan operation, I know that I've got this solid firsthand from someone directly involved. That was about the $50 million reward. There were Americans working with Venezuelans who were part of Maduro's security detail and part of the intelligence operation that turned everything off. That's how that got carried out. And now what has Trump done? He's refused to pay the $50 million.
No way. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, and that word's going to get around. The Americans lie and they don't pay their debts.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, definitely want to go down that path some more. We'll talk about that next time, but I know you got to run for right now. Thanks so much for coming out and